Before I recognize let me state that some who were not present yesterday is present today, like Suharto Ambulodto. Is still around? Oh, nawala naman. He was here earlier. Huh? Huh? So, Suharto Ambulodto is present, MP Suharto Ambulodto. Maybe it's just in the other side, sipping coffee. May I recognize MP Bainta ng Patuan to continue her interpellation and maybe consider others also after her.
Thank you, Mr.
Please proceed.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. With the Mr. Speaker, with the list that was read by the floor leader, Mr. Speaker, I would like to waive my turn now, but I will come back the last portion of the interpellation to allow other members of the Parliament to ask questions, because if they will ask what I'm going to ask, I will not ask it anymore, Mr. Speaker. So that will save us time, Mr. Speaker. So at this moment, I will waive it and I'll come back in the later part of the interpellation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well considered, you will have your time in the last part of this interpellation for brevity and to save on time so that we will not be repetitious. The questions that were earlier asked should not be asked anymore. So thank you very much. Who's next to interpellate?
Mr. Speaker, may I request that we recognize MP Attorney Jet Lim.
Where is Attorney Jet Lim? Not yet around? Maybe we can go to the next.
The third on our list is no less than MP Attorney Rasul Yitmog.
MP Attorney Rasmit Mog, you can have the floor. And if you can proceed.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alaikum beloved Speaker, to the presiding officer, floor leaders. Will the proponent be open for queries, Mr. Speaker?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, most of my questions would be for purposes of understanding better the current bill. I will be starting with transfer. It's section 6, Mr. Speaker. It says here that the actual physical transfer will happen gradually, and we have a timetable of 10 years, Mr. Speaker. So the question is, regardless, Mr. Speaker, of the actual physical transfer, upon passing this bill, we will already recognize Parang as our seat of government. Is that correct, Mr. Speaker?
Yes, that is correct, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, thank you. So the main purpose of this bill, Mr. Speaker, is actually to identify Parang as the seat of government of the bank, but it actually doesn't recognize or doesn't put where the specific area in Parang our offices will be. Is that correct, Mr. Speaker?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. With that, Mr. Speaker, I will reserve some queries later on in relation to that matter when I go over to the section on internal rules and regulation. But I'm satisfied with the answer for the first round, Mr. Speaker. In relation to, Mr. Speaker, the second set of questions is in relation to the committee on the establishment of the seat of government of the bank. With this bill, Mr. Speaker, we are actually creating a committee headed by the senior minister as the chair, together with the senior minister, the Ministry of Finance, Budget and Management, MENRE, MOPC, BCPCH, MPW, and BPDA as members, with an observer as the civil society. Is that correct, Mr. Speaker?
That is correct, Mr. Speaker.
This committee, Mr. Speaker, upon passing of the bill, will be the ones who will lead the process doing the master plan and preparing for the gradual transfer to the new BTA, Mr. Speaker. The question here, Mr. Speaker, would this be the committee that would identify the specific specific place in relation to when we situation our new seat of government. With that,
That's
yes.
the idea.
That's the idea, Mr. Speaker. Unfortunately, it is not clear here that that's one of their major functions. In fact, it is said that there will be a master plan, but it would be better if we can identify it as one of the main functions of the committee on establishment of the seat of government of the BAM or CSG. So later on, I would reserve my right, Mr. Speaker, to introduce some amendments so that it would be clear. And in relation to Section 5, Mr. Speaker, is Section 9, the internal rules and regulation. The purpose of an internal rule and regulation is in order for us to know the processes of the committee. It cannot be more than what is provided for by the law. So I believe, Mr. Speaker, with this, what the IRR will cover in the future would be the internal rules, the transfer, the preservation of the current BGC, appropriations, consultations, processes, the master plan, the receiving of foreign grant, and hopefully the finding of a specific place. Would that be correct, Mr. Speaker?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
In addition to that, Mr. Speaker, I would just like to ask the proponent, in the preparation of the IRR, would it still be necessary that there will be consultation of appropriate government agencies and other stakeholders, considering that this has been done during the committee meeting?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, what was consulted during the public consultation is the transfer, but the other specifics were not consulted. This will be dependent on the output of the committee, Mr. Speaker.
And Mr. Speaker, in line with that, there's no problem with that if it's important. But I have a concern with the line and other issuances. Because the main purpose of an IRR is simply to create an IRR. So I am not sure what other issuances the committee needs to do for the creation of the IRR. So, Mr. Speaker, if the requirement for other issuances is not that important, I would like to reserve my right later on to do some amendments, Mr. Speaker. And in relation to the third question, Mr. Speaker, this is in relation to preservation and improvement of the existing structures in Bangsamoro Government Center. This is actually Section 7. The main reason here is, as put, in order to sustain the usefulness of government operation and preserve their historical value. But I believe, Mr. Speaker, just preserving it would not achieve that goal, because aside from just preserving it, there's a need for enhancing it also. So therefore, Mr. Speaker, I would like to ask the proponent if the goal of enhancing it as a part of our cultural center and some offices would not be prejudicial to the bill, Mr. Speaker.
I would like to answer in the affirmative. It will not be prejudicial, Mr. Speaker.
So, Mr. Speaker, this will be the BGC right now would definitely be our future intramuros, something like that, cultural centers and sub-offices present. So, Mr. Speaker, I would like to reserve my right to amend and enhance this provision, Mr. Speaker. My last question, Mr. Speaker, is in relation to appropriation. It is said here that there will be 50 million peso for initial appropriation for the processes of the committee, Mr. Speaker. I would like to ask, Mr. Speaker, if we already have the certification of the Ministry of Finance that this amount is available, because after 90 days of the IRR, this committee will be functioning. In fact, the committee will need resources to create the IRR. Do we already have the certification from the MFDN, Mr. Speaker?
Unfortunately, the Minister of Finance, Budget and Management is not here, but I'm trying to recall, Mr. Speaker, if MP Bakasim was there during the committee meeting.
I believe, Mr. Speaker, there will be no problem on that as long as before we vote for the final reading of this bill, a certification be availed of from the Ministry of Finance, Budget and Management. But what I'm also interested in, Mr. Speaker, is that eventually, can they propose more than 50 million if they need it? I believe this is not limited to 50 million, Mr. Speaker.
We are open to increasing it, Mr. Speaker, if needed.
I'm not proposing of increasing it immediately, Mr. Speaker, but I am asking that eventually they can propose budget other than the initial 50 million.
Definitely, Mr. Speaker, because what is in the proposed bill is just an initial budget.
And the last query I have in relation to this bill, Mr. Speaker, will it be the committee who will be proposing for the budget of the buildings of other ministries? Or will that be something that the ministry have to do in relation to the committee?
During the committee meeting, this has been clarified that it would be the respective ministries, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. With that, Mr. Speaker, I am thankful for the queries and hopefully try to present some amendments later on. Maraming salamat po.
Salamat din.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for that brief and concise interpretation, MP Rasmit. Mr. Speaker, I request that we proceed with the next interpellator. I hope this will be again brief and concise. No other than MP Jet Lim.
MP Jetling is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Floor Leader. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Before I proceed to my brief and concise interpellation, may I take this opportunity to welcome the teachers from the island provinces, specifically from Simonol Municipality, Tawi-Tawi, Ma'am Forma Gonzalez, who is with us today in the gallery. Likewise, I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome also the delegates of Tawi-Tawi in the ongoing Barmaa. They are being hosted, I think, by Brother Rasul and the rest. Yesterday, they arrived in Cotabato. So welcome to Cotabato. Now I proceed to my interpretation.
Welcome to the Parliament, all delegates from Barma, from Tawi-Tawi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So will the proponent agree with me? And it's in their presentation that the basis for this is Section 1 of the Bangsamoro Organic Law, Article 7, which provides that the Parliament shall fix by law the permanent seat of the BGC anywhere within the territorial jurisdiction of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region, taking into consideration the accessibility and efficiency in which its mandate may be carried out under this organic law.
I agree, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the proponent also mentioned that there were 5 or 6 sites considered for this purpose.
Yes, that is correct, Mr. Speaker.
For the record, may I know from the proponent, what are these sites considered by the proponent in coming up or in determining the seat of government of the future Bangsamoro Government Center?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, the sites are Cotabato City, Dato Udin Sinswat, Sultan Kudarat, Sultan Mastura, and Parang, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Will the proponent, Mr. Speaker, will the proponent agree with me that under Section 1 of Article 7, there are 2 standards by which the seat of government must be determined?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Will the proponent agree with me that the standards are accessibility and efficiency?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
May I know from the proponent, by accessibility, if the site Parang Maguindanao, among the other sites originally proposed, stood out as the most accessible, future Bangsamoro Government Center.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, if I may read, in the study, the analysis is that Parang is in the most central location vis-a-vis other territories of the BARM. Accessibility by air, land, and especially sea transport is good since the Polyok Port is in the municipality. It is nearest to Danau del Sur and could be easily connected by sea transport to the island provinces of BARM. Upgrading the Polyok Port and the construction of the new airport for BARM in Sultan Mastura will further enhance access to Parang, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I'm asking this because of among all the MPs here, among the most affected, by any transfer would be the constituents from the island provinces. When I say island provinces, I'm not only talking about tawi-tawi, I'm also talking about of the provinces of Sulu and Basilan. So, how about efficiency? What is the qualitative definition of efficiency which the proponent took into account when they said when they determined that Parang Maguindanao is the most efficient among the sites being originally considered?
In terms of efficiency, Mr. Speaker, the following were considered: availability of infrastructure and utilities, safety, peace and orders, condition, level of economic and social services, social and political acceptability and potential to enhance development of BARM, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Lest I will be accused of being remiss in my duty, may I know from the proponent and for the record, is the proposed Parang Maguindanao site most accessible and most efficient considering our constituents from the island provinces?
Based on the assessment in the feasibility study, Mr. Speaker, yes, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now I proceed to my second question, which refers to Section 4 of the proposed bill, which refers to exclusion of the Bangsamoro Government Center from the control of the local government unit. Reading ordinarily from the text itself, I am quite confused. Maybe the proponent can elucidate us as to what it intends to do with this provision. What does it mean? For the record, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, in order to insulate the Bangsamoro Government Center from any politics and political issues and concerns within the municipality, Mr. Speaker, it is deemed prudent that it be excluded from control of the local government unit. In practical sense, Mr. Speaker, for example, requiring construction permits for buildings and other licenses to be secured for purposes of constructing in the Bangsamoro Government Center, Mr. Speaker.
Will the proponent agree with me that the Bangsamoro government is autonomous from the national government?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
It is also autonomous from the local government unit.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
In fact, it is in certain instances above the local government unit, considering that it has control, a certain degree of control and supervision of local government units.
Yes, certain degree, Mr. Speaker.
So if the concern, if that is the meaning or the intention of the proponent, would the proponent agree with you that under existing laws, under the Constitution, it is already provided, and therefore this particular provision is no longer necessary?
Mr. Speaker, if there is no danger in reiterating it by virtue of providing a language in the bill, Mr. Speaker, then we do not see any prohibition to do so, Mr. Speaker.
But in the present Section 4, it mentions of the creation, division, merger, abolition of, or substantially altering boundaries of municipalities. Is this not a provision pertaining particularly to the creation of an LGU, and therefore not necessarily connected with the creation of a seat of government?
Yes, I would agree that the first phrase actually pertains to creation of a local government unit as a political entity, Mr. Speaker.
In that case, the proponent would agree with me that it would not be necessary. In fact, it will not be legal or logical to include that phrase, as it would create confusion actually.
Perhaps, Mr. Speaker, if the interpolator would be submitting a proposed amendment, the proponent is open, Mr. Speaker.
In due time, Mr. Speaker, this representation will provide a proposed amendment subject to the agreement by everyone. Mr. Speaker, for the record, may I also know if we have already identified a particular location in Parang Maguindanao where we will put the future Bangsamoro Government Center.
For the record, Mr. Speaker, there is no identification of a particular site, Mr. Speaker.
And therefore, regardless of this particular site, we have come up with a conclusion that without this particular site, that it is still the most accessible and most efficient.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
So it could be anywhere in Parang Maguindanao, I assume. Correct, Mr. Speaker?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
I would Mr. Speaker, as promised, my interpellation will be brief and concise, and having attained the purposes of which I have stood here, I now rest my interpellation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you to the proponents.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for that brilliant interpellation, MP Attorney Jacqueline. We will now proceed to the next interpellator. May I request that we recognize MP Attorney Ishaq Mastura.
Attorney Ishaq Mastura is recognized. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, una sa lahat, gusto ko pong magpahayag as a constituent and voter of the province of Maguindanao del Norte that anything that will bring greater benefit to my home province of Maguindanao del Norte is very much welcome to this representation, without prejudice to equitable benefits to other constituents, beneficiaries, localities, ethnic groups, and other provinces. Certainly, placing the seat of government in Parang will no doubt be beneficial, particularly in economic terms, to Maguindanao del Norte, among other things. Not to mention that Parang is an adjacent or neighboring municipality of my hometown and home districts of Sultan Kudarat and Sultan Mastura municipalities, which will enjoy spillover effect from the government seat being located in Parang. This will accelerate the development of the Cotabato City to Parang Economic Corridor to include Sultan Kudarat and Sultan Mastura municipalities. That is my premise and predicate, Mr. Speaker. Now, I will go to the questions that I would like to propound to our proponent. You mentioned in your explanation and presentation of the bill, Mr. Speaker, that the previous arm already passed the law, Muslim Mindanao Autonomy Act number 42, fixing the permanent seat of government of the autonomous region in Parang Maguindanao way back in 1995. Is this correct, Mr. Speaker?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Would you agree that this MMA Act number 42 was passed by an elected regional legislative body?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Would you agree that legally speaking, or following the letter of the law, that the permanent seat of the autonomous region since 1995 was Parang Maguindanao until repealed by Parliament?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Do you agree that the BARM Administrative Code repealed MMA Act number 42 by providing that the seat of government of BARM is Cotabato City?
Temporarily, Mr. Speaker, unless otherwise fixed by the Parliament, Mr. Speaker.
But in any case, the question is, did the Administrative Code repeal MMA Act number 42?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. But again, temporarily fixing it.
I'm not asking temporarily or any other thing. I'm just asking if the Muslim Mindanao Autonomy Act was repealed by the Administrative Code.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now comes this bill number 43, establishing the seat of government of BARM in Parang, Maguindanao. So it begs the question why the BARM Administrative Code changed the seat from Parang to Cotabato City in the first place, only to propose later that Parang should be the seat of government. Wouldn't it have been easier, if not more practical, to have implemented MMA Act number 42?
Mr. Speaker, using the argument that it has been repealed, there needs to be another legislative act that would make the Parang as a new seat of government. So it would be difficult to implement MMA number 42 since there has been a temporary fixing of the seat of government in Cotabato by virtue of the administrative code.
Actually, my question is not so much about the process, because we know that the technical process has to undergo that because we are legislating something. But my question is more on the logic, the side of logic. Why did we have to go through this process if we already had an existing law to identifying Parang as the seat of government?
Why did we have to go through the process of what, Mr. Speaker?
Why did we have to go through the process of repealing MMA Act number 42, which identified already Parang as the seat of government, when we already have that in place, and all we needed to do was to implement that law, because it was not implemented for lack of budget.
Mr. Speaker, since I am not member of the first BTA that passed the administrative code, I cannot share the legislative intent of doing it. But I think as a parliament, the sitting parliament right now, which any other parliament after us can also exercise, this is just a form of exercise of that power, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will not belabor the point because the good proponent said that she was not part of the first parliament. But in any case, I'm just pointing that there is a flaw in the logic wherein we already have the existing law, then we repealed that, and then now we're passing a new law. So that's just a point of the order in the sense of process and logic that we are taking in this exercise. May we know, Mr. Speaker, during the BTA 1 under the Duterte administration, if you agree that the BTA 1 could have used the law, Muslim Mindanao Act number 42, to justify any predicate action to transfer the seat of BARM to Parang. For example, look at prospects of an area for location of the government site or land in Parang for future purchase for the government center site.
Already answered, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, the answer is yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May we know, Mr. Speaker, if any money was allocated by the first parliament or the BTA 1 for the putting up of a parliamentary building or government site? And if so, was there any identified location already?
Mr. Speaker, for the parliament, appropriation for a parliament building, I believe, yes, Mr. Speaker, but as to the location, I am not aware, Mr. Speaker.
So I will not put a distinctions anymore between a parliament building and the government site. But just for the record, was the fund appropriated for the parliament building implemented?
Not yet, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So our good colleague MP Jeff Lim already asked this question about is there already a site identified for the seat of government or the government center. However, I have to ask this question, and it might be sensitive for some, but I think it needs to be asked, which is, while media publications are considered hearsay, there were some media reports that came out quoting BARM officials that land in barangays Polyok and Landasan in Parang was supposedly purchased as the site of the future government center. Can you confirm this, Mr. Speaker?
I have no personal knowledge. As mentioned, that is hearsay, Mr. Speaker, so I cannot answer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would just like to point and put on the record that there were some publications and quotations from particular officials regarding the identification of the site. whether it was for PR purposes, propaganda, or there was real truth in the matter, we would not know because it was already in the media, and we are not in any court of law. But for the record, there were statements made to the public, to the general public, that sites or lands were already purchased in the area of Parang. Mr. Speaker, was there a legal due diligence conducted by the Bangsamoro Attorney General or by any BARM agency regarding this possible transfer to Parang?
Mr. Speaker, as Bangsamoro Attorney General and as floor leader, Mr. Speaker, it is incumbent that we acknowledge that there was a feasibility study and there is legal basis for the exercise of this power, Mr. Speaker, to transfer, Mr. Speaker. So as to legal due diligence, Mr. Speaker, in terms of reviewing the provisions of the bill, yes, Mr. Speaker.
So not necessarily a formal legal due diligence, just a general review of the legality of
Yes,
the
Mr.
process. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I'm nearing my end. I'm asking these questions, by the way, and I need to put this on the record because, as you know, my background is in economics. But I think this is also practical and common sense. That if you know there is a leakage of a particular site for government center, it would lead to land speculation and land prices would go up. And that would be detrimental to a lot of our constituents because now they cannot purchase land because people are speculating that the surrounding areas of the identified land will go up. So and yet it's not yet sure because we're saying it's not yet identified. A similar occurrence happened actually in the site of Laguindingan Airport in Cagayan de Oro. For those of you from Lanao as well as Bukidnon, like Attorney Joe Lorena, they would know that the Ayala land or the Ayala conglomerate purchased land in the current site of the airport 30 years ago, 40 years ago. So they already identified where the airport would be located. So when the airport was announced that it will be placed in that area, their stocks went up and the price went up and their land bank increased in value. So that is the price of this kind of speculation. So that's why I'm asking these questions for the benefit of our constituents. So this will be my last question, or second to the last. How is such a situation going to be addressed?
Mr. Speaker, that is the reality of the circumstance. I think it is an innate in all of us that we find opportunities and enterprise in such a move, Mr. Speaker. I cannot give a concrete answer to that as to the increase in the assessment, but I think the local government unit will have to go through a process of really appraising them, considering the situation, Mr. Speaker.
I am satisfied with that answer, Mr. Speaker. So this will be my last question. Wouldn't you say, Mr. Speaker, now that we are in the second term of the BTA or the transition period, with more or less 2 years to go, that in order not to look absurd, since MMA Act number 42 earlier fixed Parang as the permanent seat, but was repealed, that we ought to leave the decision on the seat of the government to the elected parliament?
Mr. Speaker, while I agree, Mr. Speaker, that could be something that the regular parliament could do as transition government, Mr. Speaker, we would like to already hand over a government that is fixed, that has institutions that are more or less permanent, and decisions and wisdom that we, even if during the transition we made, so that the regular government could focus on more important things upon their assumption, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That's all for now.
Thank you for your brief interpellation and direct to the point. Who's next, Majority Leader?
Mr. Speaker, may I request that we recognize MP, the Honorable MP from Lanao, MP Babaw.
Thank you very much,
On my list, it's MP Babaw.
Madam Floor Leader. Mr. Speaker, is recognized. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much. Maraming salamat po. Well, actually, before the interpellation made by our colleagues, I was thinking of asking a very important question to me about the legal. I was thinking that this legal measure that we are discussing is about is pertaining to legal basis of transferring or declaring Parang as the seat of government of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region. But I was educated with the information I just hear from now that there was this in Act number 42 that had already declared Parang as a seat of the BAM government. Now, parang tingin ko, ano ba itong pinag-usapan natin when there was already this declaration? So, my first question is that to the proponent is that meron bang feasibility study or development study on how to go into this transfer? Because according to pursuant to Section 3, Mr. Speaker, the transfer will be gradual, and the first to be transferred the office of the Wali, the office of the Chief Minister, the Bangsamoro Parliament, and the ministries, offices, agencies. So we cannot do this overnight. Maybe in the span of 10 years, we could really transfer it. Pero sa akin, my concern is that there is already a law, a regional law that really identified Parang as our receipt of government of BAM. Now, Mr. Speaker, when the people had shown yung kahapon about some video, nakita ko yung presentation niya about Putrajaya in Malaysia. Dahil nilipat nila ito sa Putrajaya dahil masyado ng masikip sa Kuala Lumpur. So that was a very good decision on the part of the Malaysian government dahil sumisikip ng KL. So similarly, in our situation now, I really fully support the idea of transferring the seat of government, the permanent seat in Parang, for reasons identified under Section 4, saying that accessibility and efficiency ay yung pinaka-importante i-concern natin dito. Now, ang dito sa akin para although I really support that idea of transferring the seat of government, but I'm bothered with the lack of development plan, or the feasibility study, Dahil maraming nagtanong sa akin yan sa labas, yung mga transportation. Kasi if this will be immediately transferred to the proposed location, displaced, there is a possibility that meron displacement of our workers, of our employees. They will have to travel from Cotabato, where they reside today, to Parang. Sabi ko, hindi na problema yun kasi it's about 20 minutes lang yan. Now, sa akin ito, Mr. Speaker, personally, and the media officially, I am supporting this idea, provided that the proponent of this act shall come up with a development plan, with a feasibility study on how we will approach the transfer. Paano gagawin ito? Dahil kung ang iniisip mo natin is wala tayong legal basis on transferring this, it was mentioned earlier, but there is already a legal basis for us to transfer the seat of government to Parang, Maguindanao, and this is also a very welcome opportunity for the people of Lanao Sur. Kasi medyo nabawas-bawasan natin ng konti yung travel dahil nandiyan sa Parang, and the area is really good for future development for our people. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. MP Ali Babaw. Who's next? Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, our Deputy Floor Leader, Attorney Jo Lorena, is already very ready to interpellate.
The white-haired gentleman from Sulu is recognized. MP John.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Floor Leader, of course, my idol, the Speaker, is around. My courtesy and respect for him, and of course, to the Chief Minister. Some of the questions have been propounded already, so I will not repeat that, but there are implications of those questions. First, it was already raised that there is MNA Act 42. Am I correct, Mr. Speaker, as approved?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
And this MNA Act 42 was effective even after the creation of the BAM. Am I correct?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
And under the provision of Republic Act 1954, particular Section 1 of Article 2, there was a contingent provision. It says that the national government shall provide the funds for the transfer of the seat of the autonomy from the current temporary station in Cotabato to any other place. Am I correct? If you are aware.
In 1954, you had.
Yes. Was there any attempt or effort on the part of the government of the day to pursue, since we have already identified that MNA Act 42 is valid, to pursue efforts to the national government and request for funding support for the immediate transfer, either in BTA 1 or BTA 2?
Not that I am aware of, Mr. Speaker, because a similar provision is not copied in the 11054, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, I know the proponent is not aware because this is BTA 1. Was the amendment of the seat provided for in the administrative code an initiative of the current government of the day? If you are aware.
The current parliament, the BTA Parliament, Mr. Speaker, as the lawmaking body of the Bangsamoro government, Mr. Speaker.
But I recall the administrative code was introduced as a government of the day bill. Am I correct?
Yes, that is correct, Mr. Speaker, but the introduction may have already changed by the time that it was passed, Mr. Speaker.
That's correct. So is the submission of the proposal to change the seat from a valid law under MNA 42 to the last provision of the administrative code a product of a frustration for the lack of funding support from the national government, if you are only aware?
I am not aware, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, so because if MMA Act 42 is a valid law, then under the intergovernmental relations, we could have asked for a funding from the national government because specifically the Public Act 1954 as already admitted by the Speaker provides that it's the national government who will provide for the funds for the transfer of the seat of government from the temporary seat of Cotabato to any other place. Now, my next question is, if you are only aware, I know you are not part of the assembly, but if you are aware, was there prior consultation with all local governments of the provinces prior to this proposed bill on the matter of the transfer of seat?
Prior to this being filed, Mr. Speaker,
No.
I am not aware, Mr. Speaker.
Yes. So, from the perspective of the government of the day, is this a very important issue to be resolved by the Parliament and with the government?
It is a necessary legislative measure, Mr. Speaker.
It being a legislative issue and a critical issue because the provision under Article 7 provides that the seats of government must follow some guideposts: effectivity, centrality, and efficiency. Am I correct?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Have we considered the sentiment of other provinces of the region with respect to its effectiveness in considering Parang as the seat of government?
During the public consultation, Mr. Speaker, we sent out invitations to all local government units. Some were able to attend, Mr. Speaker, and most of them have expressed support, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Under Article 7 of Republic Act 11-054, there is mention in item B that for matters of important and essential issue, the Parliament will call for a referendum to decide on the matter of issue. Are we not contemplating of calling, is there not, because this is a sensitive issue with respect to the other provinces, is it not necessary that we call for a referendum so that the other stakeholders who may not be, the 4 million, will be able to help us in deciding as to the seat of government?
Mr. Speaker, I believe that it is not necessary to call for a referendum. Mr. Speaker, in the exercise again of the plenary powers of this Parliament, we can exercise such power. And also, Mr. Speaker, it's already provided for in the Bangsamoro Organic Law. It's the Parliament that has to determine the seat of government.
Yes, but under Article 7, Section 1, it is provided in the power of the Parliament that for matters of important issue, the Parliament will call for a referendum. So that is the basis of my question. So from your perspective, there is no need.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Now I go to the local government units. In identifying Parang, have you considered what is the classification of the land areas in Parang municipality?
Classification of land areas.
Yes. How many percent are agricultural? How many are institutional? How many are commercial? And how many are industrial? Because it might affect the economy of the region in the Parang, in the municipality of Parang, in the province of Maguindanao.
Mr. Speaker, I don't have that information right now, but during the public consultation, the Honorable Mayor of Parang presented the potential of Parang. And it is my belief also that this can be further discussed by the committee to be created under this bill, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. There is a provision here that we will set aside the local government to avoid embellishing. But under current law, the grant of conversion of land area from other classification to, for example, from agricultural to commercial or residential is the power and authority of the local government. Now, have we identified specific, I know this was asked, but I would like to repeat, have we identified specifically an area in Parang?
No.
Where?
No, Mr. Speaker.
That being the case, we are not certain whether in Parang is forestal, agricultural, or commercial. That being the case, we have to go through the process of land conversion, which is tedious and difficult.
Mr. Speaker, that can be done by the committee, Mr. Speaker.
So I hope the committee will already address that before the plenary, because
A committee to be created by under the bill, Mr. Speaker. There's a committee.
okay, so you are showing that the seat of government is just identifying the place.
Yes,
but
sir.
not yet the location
Yes, Mr.
of the seat of the parliament, am I correct, of the government?
Yes, Mr.
Now, do you have an idea, general idea of, because they mentioned about Putrajaya, how much requirement is needed by the Bangsamoro government for a regional center?
Mr. Speaker, there is no fixed figure for this, Mr. Speaker, because as I mentioned in the bill, it will go for 10 years, Mr. Speaker. The committee to be created under the bill, under Section 5, will have to also include that in the overall, as an overall deliverable, Mr. Speaker. How much will it cost overall until 10 years for us to be able to have a fully functional Bangsamoro Government Center?
My concern is only on the land area. How much land area is available in Parang and how much do we need? Because in identifying a regional center, we must know the size of the requirement of the regional center vis-a-vis the area for which that center will be located. So that is my concern. I hope we will have a general picture of the municipality of Parang, and at the same time, in the committee that we work, we will have a general picture as to how many hectares is needed by the regional center. Mr. Chair. Now I go to another set of questions. You mentioned that there was already an allocation for the conduct of a study. Am I correct? Conduct a study, an
There
amount.
has been a study, Mr. Speaker.
Was this study commissioned by the Parliament?
It was commissioned by the Ministry of Public Works as reported yesterday, Mr. Speaker.
What was the basis for the commissioning by the ministry? Is there any resolution or legal basis from the Parliament authorizing the ministry to commission the conduct of that study?
Mr. Speaker, as a mandate, the Ministry of Public Works takes care of possible infrastructure. Forward-looking, Mr. Speaker, the ministry commissioned the conduct of a feasibility study because there has been reports, no basis for doing so, meaning even members of the Parliament have no sufficient space within the government center, and as a matter of initiative, Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Public Works initiated the conduct of the feasibility study.
Should thank the ministry, however, from my perspective, since the provision of law provides that the seat of government be identified with the Parliament, it should be the Parliament who should commission the agency of the Bangsamoro that will conduct the feasibility study. Nonetheless, I hope the feasibility study would be only for the purpose of, as you mentioned already, identifying the place in this bill. Let me propound another question on, like Kokoy Bastura, I'm also an economist. So I would grapple with some figures. Would the study cover already how much money will be spent for the transfer, if you may have? Do you have already an estimate, the ballpark figure?
Ballpark figure, as earlier answered, Mr. Speaker, we do not have that, Mr. Speaker. But I mean, the bill provides for an initial fund, Mr. Speaker, of 50 million.
Now, if we don't have, although I understand that the implementation will be 10 years, we will be able to sustain the development of the regional center within the 10 years without knowing our capacity to finance it.
Mr. Speaker, similar to MMA Act number 42, it was an exercise of the plenary powers of the Legislative Assembly. This is also a decision of the Parliament, and it is left to the wisdom of the Parliament to exercise these powers, Mr. Speaker. We are talking about a substantive decision that a law can only provide for substantial provisions, but not procedural, or even the nitty-gritty of as far as projected budget, Mr. Speaker.
I understand that, but the only difference is in the Public Act 2054, it is the national government who will finance. But in this case, since there is no provision for the national government to finance it, it will be us. And therefore, the amount to be taken for the development of our regional center will be taken from our fiscal space. And I understand that there are only few money sources we have. Of course, the Black Grant, the Special Development Fund, share from national income, and of course, tax collection from revenue from more people. But would that suffice? Because we might eat up all our budgetary fiscal space just to develop the entire regional center. That is my concern. I hope eventually, before the feasibility study is being done, the Parliament will be made aware, and that the feasibility study should be submitted to the Parliament so that we also know. Like Popoy, I'm also
Master
concerned.
plan, no, Mr.
Yeah.
Speaker? The master plan.
Yes, the
Okay.
master plan. So I hope that it will be submitted to the Parliament so that the Parliament can scrutinize that and can see whether it is feasible or not feasible. I understand in the identification of regional center, there are many things to consider. So yun lang muna, pero I still have, in order to allow the other members to ask questions, I will stop it there. But I still have some question here. Although I'd like to manifest that it is within the power of the Parliament of the BTA now to identify the ship, because under the provision of Article 16, all powers vested in the Parliament is a power vested in the Bangsamoro Transition Authority. Thank you, Madam Speaker, but I'll reserve my right to ask some question after the other have propounded the question. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, MP Joe. Of course, it will be shorter when you come back to the rostrum because you have been given enough opportunity. Thank you very much. Next, Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, at this point in our deliberation, we only have 4 interpellators left, and may I request the next interpellator to please focus your interpellation on questions, on matters that were not yet raised. Thank you.
And
So,
other-
may I request that we recognize MP Engineer Don Long.
may recognize another admonition or suggestion. Please go direct to the point.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The first, Mr. Speaker, is when we refer to the Section 4 of the bill, it says that to the exclusion of the local government unit, what specifically are we excluding in terms of the powers of the local government unit that we want the Bangsamoro government to do the direct control and supervision?
I answered this earlier, Mr. Speaker. For example, Mr. Speaker, the requirements for securing building permits or other permits for purposes of constructing, Mr. Speaker, and other, traffic laws and regulations within the municipality, Mr. Speaker, because it is a government center as an extension of the regional government. I mean, parang extraterritoriality ba, Mr. Speaker?
So for the record, and in terms of the intention of the bill, are those the only ones? Are there no, because as what was stated a while ago, the whereas provision, which states the sentence before this provision talks about creation, division, merging powers of the Bangsamoro government. Is there anything in relation to that refers to this control and supervision?
Mr. Speaker, I have also answered this already, Mr. Speaker, that this may actually be a misplaced qualification, Mr.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. The second thing, Mr. Speaker, is may I ask, although this may have been answered, what is the difference between a feasibility study and a comparative study?
By its nature.
It appears to be an academic question,
Mr. Speaker,
I cannot give the definition of feasibility.
Mr. Speaker, in the transfer of Indonesia of its capital to East Kalimantan, they had extensive feasibility study, which is still undergoing challenges right now. The same case with Malaysia in Putrajaya. When they designed the Putrajaya for 300,000, now it's only 100,000. So a comparative study is just looking at some indicators, but a feasibility study would look at all the aspects of logistical, financial, market challenges. So in the comparative study, what were the key aspects used as a method of criteria, Mr. Speaker?
We don't have a comparative study, Mr. Speaker.
A study was mentioned, Mr. Speaker, that was the basis for this bill.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
What study was it called?
It is referred to as the feasibility study, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, and the key criteria, for example, in Indonesia, they use that it is a geographic center. There is availability of land owned by government, far from national disasters, low risk in conflict, and close in terms of basic facilities. So are there general criteria used in the feasibility study?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, if I may, those were the criteria items were location and accessibility, land availability and suitability, infrastructure and utilities, economic, institutional and social services, social and political acceptability, safety, peace and order condition, and potential to enhance development of BARM, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in the Bangsamoro Organic Law, it provided for the permanent seat of government. But in this bill, we are putting the name of the bill as the seat of government. But this means that we are anticipating a future change by not providing for the word permanent in the bill.
Mr. Speaker, since parliaments change, Mr. Speaker, as circumstances change, we are not, we do not close our minds to possible changes, Mr. Speaker. So it depends on the circumstances.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in the study, can we have an idea of what kind or how big a land does the study look at to define an appropriate size for a seat of government? Is it 10 hectares, 20, 100, 300, 500?
Mr. Speaker, based on the feasibility study, there have been identification of a determination of available lands, Mr. Speaker. For Parang, I can see, Mr. Speaker, that we have land area in hectares, available data here, Mr. Speaker. Okay, so there's so that's for Parang. Yes, Mr. Speaker. So we have Poblacion 1 with 203 hectares, Poblacion 2, 185 hectares, Sarmiento Landasan with 2,898 hectares, Magsaysay 276 hectares, Nituan 1,002 hectares, Making 509 hectares, and Polyok 2,140 hectares, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I'm curious to know, based on the study, what is just the average size of land that we are looking at that will be appropriate for a government center? Because if it's only 10 hectares, maybe some area in Cotabato City will be feasible. But if the study will provide that it's maybe 100, 200, 300, or 500, I'd just like to get a feel of the size.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, it's 300 hectares, Mr. Speaker. 300
hectares, Mr. Speaker. Although this was pointed out by MP Mastura a while ago,
what are our security measures to ensure that we will be able to procure from private entities 300 hectares, considering that we are live in Facebook and social media, and everybody will be aware that we will be looking for 300 hectares, and that the definition of a contract of sale is that there is a willing seller and a willing buyer. And therefore, a seller can always define their conditions. So what mechanisms can we install? Because of course we will be using government funds, public funds, that we protect the interest of the public.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, the municipality, local government unit of Parang has been very supportive of this measure, of course, because it will directly benefit the municipality, Mr. Speaker. We feel that it would be in the best interest also of the municipality that it assists us in ensuring that no opportunistic activities will happen in the course of this, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Anyway, I trust that there will be mechanisms to mediate parties. On Section 5, on the Committee on the Establishment of the Seat of Government. Mr. Speaker, we are looking at 10 years as the existence of the committee. And we who have experience in government understand the concept of committees, their temporary nature, the way they handle documents. For example, we establish a committee today. What assurance do we have that the documents, the discussions, the minutes of meetings, the directions will still be present 10 years from now? Compare and contrast this to the concept of an office, an accountable office that will ensure the accountability of documents.
Mr. Speaker, in the course of this of implementing this bill, if it becomes a law, Mr. Speaker, the committee will have to the ministries themselves have to propose for their own budget, Mr. Speaker. The committee as well, if it intends to seek additional funding, if the 50 million initial funds would not be sufficient for the operations thereof, will also have to present to the Parliament, Mr. Speaker. Again, the Parliament can demand from the committee that the requested documents be made available.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My interest here, Mr. Speaker, is who will act as the secretariat of the committee?
Mr.
I just want to under what office is this committee? To whom is the committee accountable? Is the decision of the committee final, or does it need approval from another agency like the Chief Minister? What is the relationship of the committee to the Parliament?
Mr. Speaker, the committee will have to decide among themselves, among the members agencies, as to who will act as secretariat, Mr. Speaker. As to accountability, Mr. Speaker, I think it is also for purposes of transparency. It is also we are open to adding a provision that would require the committee to submit, Mr. Speaker, a report to the Parliament, Mr. Speaker.
So thank you, Mr. Speaker. At least we are now open to having a connection to the Parliament. But can I just be clarified, Mr. Speaker, because it says that the chairman is the senior minister. So there is no need anymore for the approval of the chief minister.
No longer, Mr. Speaker. Not necessary.
Mr. Speaker, I agree with the point that it states to lead and organize the preparation and development of master plans. But it also includes the word implementation. So how do we imagine the committee to lead implementation of master plans? Will they be
head of procurement on some of the procurement items here, or are these all delegated to the ministries? Does this provision clearly state who are the head of procuring entities?
Mr. Speaker, we did not spell it out because it will be subject to the IRR to be crafted by the committee, Mr. Speaker. But since I have also answered earlier that the proposals for budget for particular construction of infrastructure will be the responsibility of the respective ministries, Mr. Speaker, I would like to believe that procurement will have to be done through the respective ministry, Mr. Speaker.
With that, Mr. Speaker, I end my interpellation. I'd like to express my hope that well, with the vision, if ever, that there will be a government center that is large enough to provide all the amenities and requirements of the Bangsamoro Parliament.
Thank you very much, MP Don Loong. Mr. Speaker, we have 3 more interpellators. May we recognize the Honorable MP Ali Sangki.
The Honorable Gentleman from Maguindanao, MP Ali Sangki is recognized. Please proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My concern is that the transfer of this site of the BARM government to Parang will entail so much money, additional money, and that is money of the people. So this representation would like to ask the proponent whether they have really conducted a study on the asset and capability of the BARM to acquire a land that will cost multi-million pesos, and we have that money. May I know from the proponent?
Mr. Speaker, when there is legal basis for it, Mr. Speaker, I think availability of funds will still depend on the appropriate ministry. I mean to say, it's not upon me to say it, but it's also the Parliament that would appropriate, Mr. Speaker.
I am asking this, Mr. Speaker, because with due respect sa ating mga kasama, no, it was so disgusting that there were so many assets of the arm, now of the BARM, that were neglected by the previous, with due respect to them. I'm referring to so many assets given to the BARM, to the arm. Now, are you aware of Executive Order 142? Executive Order 142 dated December 10, 1993, wherein so many assets of government, GOCCs, located in the BARM were transferred to the arm and now the BARM. Are you aware of that?
I don't have information right now, but I can look it up, Mr. Speaker.
I am asking this, Mr. Speaker, because the way I look at it, we have hundreds of hectares of land that will be developed by the BARM without buying a land away from the growth center. If you are transferring the BARM center to a very far away place, have you also considered the necessary infrastructure like an airport? Have you considered that? And also a port, a shipping port. Have you also considered that?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
I'm asking this because you will notice that Parang is very far from the airport. Now, while I'm referring, Mr. Speaker, to the property which was turned over to the arm during the time of Governor during our time in SPA and Pangandaman. It's an area of 500, I have the document, Mr. Speaker. It's a 575 hectares property. And this is owned by SPDA and now owned by the BARM. Are you aware that there is about 300 hectares
that can be used by the BARM as its government center? Are you aware of that, Madam?
I am not aware about the SPDA property that is available, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, with due respect, I have here a document that is virtually more than almost 400 pages of document about the property of SPDA. This is the SPDA MIDP, where we have the Saralica Village subdivision. And this is also the airport.
What do you intend to do with that?
I will be giving this to the committee,
Yes,
Mr. Speaker.
that will be very
Mr.
helpful.
Speaker, as a sort of basis for them to study whether there is a need to buy a very far away land in Tarang or to have or use a very near proper area near the airport, which is owned by the arm, or now
We
arm.
easily save more than 300 million.
The area is 575 hectare. Actually, our airport, the occupied by the military, is owned by SPDA. 117 hectare turned over to the military, to the airport. So that,
May I ask if there were documents or titles were already transferred to the armed government, then
there was a memorandum of agreement. I have the copy, Your Honor, signed by Governor, the armed governor, Pangdaman, and the SPDA administrator at that time, Solomon Tagay. Here's the document, including the Executive Order 142, dated December 10, 1993, and also the properties that were turned over to the arm, including SPDA in Buluan, including Lake Lanao, was turned over. And
maybe the gentleman can help us by submitting that to the committee for the reference and whatever purpose it may serve.
yes, Mr. Speaker, and I have also
Thank you.
I have also here, Mr. Speaker, I was requesting the secretariat to show in the visual.
Una siguro, bigyan mo muna sa secretary.
I have already given a copy, Mr. Speaker, and nandiyan sa napalabas na. But there's the area showing the airport and where the property that I supposed to be looked into by the committee.
Tad na ng Scotch
There's the
tape.
area. The airport is indicated. The property where we can put up our government center was also indicated. And the Xerox copy of the title, Mr. Speaker, is already here with me. The Xerox copy of the title that was turned over to the arm, but nobody took care. So I think this is now timely that the committee looking for this new government center or site of the BARM can take a look into this SPD property which is now owned by the BARM.
Sige, bigyan natin ng trabaho yung committee. Pag-aralan nila yung makapal na documents. Yes, sir.
And
Finally,
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much, and
thank you.
I hope that the committee will look into the proximity because airport actually, Mr. Speaker, is a enticing infrastructure for investor, especially if we are dealing with the Middle East millionaires. They have their own private jet plane and they want to land on a nearby area. That is Awang. Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen, from Maguindanao. Next.
Mr. Speaker, I request that we recognize MP Attorney Suharto Ambulodto.
Ayaw nyo ba mag-break muna sandali? Kanina pa gallbladder break. I yield to the speaker. Adjourn for 15 minutes, sir. You can have your coffee.
Suspended.
Suspended lang.
Majority Leader, sama tayo tumigil kay I think we have recognized MP Suharto Ambulto. The Honorable MP Suharto Ambulto, Attorney Suharto Ambulto is recognized.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker,
Kasama mo boses mo.
yes, Mr. Speaker, first there was this MMA Act number 42. During that was enacted by the defunct Regional Legislative Assembly during when after 9054, Cotabato City opted not to be included. So there was a requirement, a necessity that Cotabato City, that we find a seat of regional government other than Cotabato City or out of Cotabato City simply because of the very reality that Cotabato City was not included. We were very grateful, Mr. Speaker, that first, Cotabato City opted to be included in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region. And then we, residents of Cotabato City, were doubly happy, glad, that the government of the day, under the leadership of the More Islamic Liberation Front, with the participation of the More National Liberation Front, proposed and adopted a Bangsamoro Administrative Code that provides that the seat of the Bangsamoro government be in Cotabato City. Now, Mr. Speaker, one basic question that would have precipitated the need to move the seat of the Bangsamoro government from the city to the municipality of Parang, may we be advised as to what is the supervening event that occurred after the enactment of the Bangsamoro Administrative Code that compels us to transfer the seat of government from Cotabato City to the municipality of Parang. Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Majority Leader may answer.
The circumstances that precipitated this are the needs actually of the regional bureaucracy to cater to its constituents as a regional government, as well as lack of space, the traffic congestion. So these are social and economic realities that have triggered, Mr. Speaker, to commission the conduct of a feasibility study.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If I may amplify the earlier question of the Honorable Don Loong, will this stated needs that appears to compel the movement out of Cotabato City not be addressed by some spaces within the city of Cotabato?
Mr. Speaker, the feasibility study also identified Cotabato City and included it in the list of possible relocation sites because, of course, it's already here. But, Mr. Speaker, there are also circumstances that and criteria that were taken into consideration in ranking which among the 5 identified location sites would be the most viable relocation site, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, if the Honorable Majority Floor Leader would simply oblige, can she enumerate again? I think there were 4 for purposes of clarity to the other members of this committee.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, the alternative sites that were identified are Cotabato City, Dato Ubin Sinsuat, Sultan Kudarat, Sultan Mastura, and Parang.
And then, Mr. Speaker, may the Honorable Floor Leader also enumerate again the criteria that were used as in rating the feasibility and propriety of one over the others?
Once again, Mr. Speaker, the criteria that were used are location and accessibility, land availability and suitability, infrastructure and utilities, economic, institutional, and social services, social and political acceptability, safety, peace and order condition, and the potential to enhance development of BARM, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Well, let me first deal with I think the third. It speaks of infrastructure. In Parang, may we be clarified as to the readiness of infrastructure in the municipality of Parang in accommodating the offices and bureaucracies that will be hosted by the town should this August body approve the proposed legislative measure transferring the seat of government from the historic Cotabato City to the municipality of Parang.
So based on the study, Mr. Speaker, it says that the municipality of Parang connects Maguindanao province to Lanao del Sur and the provinces and cities beyond, including Zamboanga to the southwest and Diligan and Cagayan to the northwest through the Narciso Ramos Highway. There are several proposed national road projects that are passing through Parang based on the road network development project of the DPWH and JICA's urban infrastructure development for Greater Cotabato that will further improve its links to Lanao del Sur, Cotabato City, and the special geographic areas. Now
Thank you, Madam. Okay, thank you, Madam Floor Leader. Madam Floor Leader, on the matter of utilities, infrastructure and utilities, how much megawatt of power supply is currently being provided by the Maguindanao Electric Cooperative to the municipality of Parang? And how much more megawatts or gigawatts will the establishment of the seat of government in the municipality of Parang further require? We do understand even before the answer, Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker and Madam Floor Leader, we do understand that we already have a problem with Magelco. So right now, we will be locating the seat of government of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Government from Cotabato City, serviced by Aboitiz, Cotabato Light and Power Company, and then relocate it into a service area of the Maguindanao Maguindanao Electric Cooperative.
Mr. Speaker, during the public consultation, the local government unit of Parang presented that and admitted that there is a challenge with respect to power supply provided by Magelco. However, during the same public consultation, Mayor Ibay relayed to us that he was going to have a meeting the following day with Magelco because there was a commitment to provide more stable connection to the franchise area of Parang. And we are also confident that during the 10-year period for which we hope to be able to implement this transfer, if this bill passes into law, that it will improve, Mr. Speaker. The government through the Intergovernmental Energy Board is also discussing this with PISAM and Department of Energy to ensure that there will be that this matter will be addressed, Mr. Speaker.
Madam Speaker, a conversation on power supply. How about the water facility? Because even sa restroom na lang siguro, requirement ng Bangsamoro Government Center, that should be substantial enough. How is the current water system of the municipality of Parang?
Mr. Speaker, as shared by the Mayor of Parang also during the public consultation, there is an ongoing project to improve the water facilities in Parang. During the same public consultation, we would like to also emphasize that representatives actually from Agenco, from MCWD, and all the other public utilities that are relevant for the functioning and operation of the Bangsamoro Government Center were present. And they are also optimistic, Mr. Speaker, that during the period of 10 years, Mr. Speaker, if this bill passes into law, that this will be addressed, Mr. Speaker.
Madam Speaker, as Mr. Speaker, Madam Floor Leader, as is the availability of this facility be a condition sine qua non for the effectivity of a transfer?
Mr. Speaker, the availability of these utilities will be material. I cannot say that it is a condition sine qua non because we cannot predict, no, between today and 10 years from now.
Madam Floor Leader, Mr. Speaker, would Madam Floor Leader be amenable to providing a provision, maybe in the transitory provision, of a clause that would require the presence of essential utilities as a condition sine qua non for the effectual transfer of the
Mr. Speaker, I think that the
would that be possible, Mr. Speaker, Madam Floor Leader?
Well, that can be proposed, Mr. Speaker, but I would just like to point out that the proposed bill, based on the committee report, also provides that there will be gradual transfer, Mr. Speaker.
What I mean, Madam Speaker, kasi is that the start of the transfer, kasi mahirap, Mr. Speaker, mahirap po na bigla tayong andoon na, nakatransfer na tayo, nakabili na tayo ng lupa, everybody is about to be displaced, pero wala pa rin. Yun nga lang po ano ko po.
Nandito po siya sa Section 6, Mr. Speaker. The actual physical transfer shall proceed in a gradual manner upon the completion of required infrastructure such as office buildings, roads, light and power, water, communication, and other necessary facilities, Mr. Speaker.
Okay po. Now, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Madam Floor Leader, that is ang ano ko lang doon is that would we authorize the Committee on the Establishment of the Seat of Government in Parang to proceed with the transfer on all other reasons, the procurement of land, even without the basic utilities?
That is something that will have to be in the master plan, Mr. Speaker. So I cannot say that, but by virtue of this bill, Mr. Speaker, we will authorize that, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, see. Okay. Now, Mr. Speaker, how many employees do we have in the Bangsamoro that is holding office in Cotabato City?
Well, not really in Cotabato City. But the entire bureaucracy, Mr. Speaker, including offices in other
We have 30,000, 36,000,
48, including
48,000.
co-terminus, contract of service, casual job orders.
So this includes already the entire size of the bureaucracy of MBHTE. So is it safe?
MBHTE?
It includes MBHTE.
Includes, yes.
So, Madam Floor Leader, Mr. Speaker, so is it safe to presume that we have around 22,000 employees residing in Cotabato City that we would compel to relocate to Parang?
Mr. Speaker, there is no compulsion to be made because Parang is 30 minutes away from Cotabato City.
Madam,
and we are mindful that there will be challenges, Mr. Speaker. That is why we included in the committee report, we propose to include the Ministry of Transportation and Communications to possibly provide mechanisms such as shuttles, similar to other provincial governments that also have workers who live outside of the
or opening of new franchises. Di ba pwedeng ano? So, finally, Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Madam Floor Leader. Isang pwedeng ito medyo it's parang how would we explain it to our people that the people of Cotabato City fought hard to be included in the Bangsamoro autonomous government, and then all of a sudden para bang they would simply be left and forsaken with their seat of government na for the last 20 years have been in Cotabato City. Ngayon pang naisama na po ang Cotabato City, ngayon pa po lilisan at iiwanan sila.
We acknowledge po that all sentiments are valid, no? Your sentiment, well, I'm trying to remove myself from the equation, Mr. Speaker. I will not be here. I may not be here 10 years from now. So I know that the Cotabato City, as I mentioned, will always hold a significant role, having played part of the history of the Bangsamoro. We have established a lot of investments here, and the Bangsamoro Government Center as it is right now will still be maintained. It will not be forsaken. And any change, I say this all the time now, any change is scary, but same with staying the same.
Madam Speaker, yes, I understand kasi kayo din po mismo, Madam Floor Leader, taga rito din po, you grow also up in Cotabato City. Siguro po ang isang may tanong natin, second to the last, would be, meron po bang doon sa feasibility study, yung po bang impact assessment, economic impact assessment on Cotabato City?
Recording stopped.
That's relocation. Yung displacement kanina, problema na ni MOTC yun. Siguro man natin. Siguro po hindi ko na itanong kung si Ministry of Human Settlements is capable and ready to provide 6,000
Recording in progress.
our employees. Huwag na 22,000, 6,000. Yun na lang po. Doon po sa economic impact assessment na lang po on the transfer moving out of Cotabato. Because you will remember, Madam Floor Leader, kung anong nangyari sa atin nung iniwan tayo ng Region 12. So ngayon po, ililipat na po natin sa parang ano po yung economic impact sa ating mga kababayan.
Dito sa feasibility study, wala pong nakalagay na economic impact on Cotabato City because the study is limited to the feasibility on the transfer to a new site. But I would like to believe po na since Cotabato City will still play a major role because there's an airport in Awang na kailangan pwede rin pong dyan dumaan at marami na pong mga establishments dito. Alam mo, yung nangyari na pag-alis ng Region 12, we thought po na mamatay yung ano natin. Pero hindi naman po. So I believe in the resilience of the Cotabateños. And hopefully po, doon sa 10 taon na yun, ay hindi naman po pababayaan ng Bangsamoro government.
Yes, ma'am, can we be, before we, maybe tomorrow, kung kailan yung amendments, can we be furnished copy of the study conducted by?
We actually furnished the committee members during the committee meeting, but we can, of course,
Okay.
Mr. Speaker.
Okay. Madam Floor Leader, Mr. Speaker, final question. Ito matter of law na po sa BOL. Sabi po ng Bangsamoro Organic Law, dapat daw po there will be no diminution on the powers of local government. Now, andito po yung ating provision dito na the location of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Government will be autonomous from the local government unit. When we say autonomous po, at nabanggit po kanina yung permit, building permit, is that even allowed, Mr. Speaker? Madam Floor Leader?
Well, Mr. Speaker, really the idea here is applying parang extraterritoriality nga na the laws and the issuances and our policies as a regional government here will apply sana doon sa regional Bangsamoro government center.
Ang worry ko lang, Mr. Speaker, Madam Floor Leader, tungkol dito po is very specific po. Even in the crafting of the local government code, masyado pong napaka-explicit yung nakalagay po sa BOL and even in the BBL prior to that na there will be no diminution. And in fact, here, i-host na tayo ng parang tapos tayo pa ang magano. So, is this that really critical or this is parang mas maganda sana kung yung meron yata kayong kino-consider na situation na dapat ma-avoid. Kung pwede lang po sana, baka po pwedeng mas explicitate yun at yun po yung i-avoid natin without diminution in the powers of our local government.
So, Mr. Speaker, we will accept proposed amendments, Mr. Speaker, at the proper time.
Okay. Maraming salamat at we congratulate the committee for the Committee on Rules for a very splendid committee report and a very good bill. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, thank you, MP Ambulodto, for that splendid interpellation. We still have one more interpellator. Mr. Speaker, may we recognize MP City Pahani Uy.
Is recognized.
MP City Pahani Uy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Deputy Floor Leader. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh and magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. So I have simple questions lang po, Mr. Speaker. It was mentioned that there was a feasibility study conducted. May we know, Mr. Speaker, if yung feasibility study po ba na ginawa is per proposed location, like you find proposed locations po, or is it conducted in general po, Mr. Speaker?
Mr. Speaker, the title of the feasibility study is a feasibility study on the transfer of the Barn Government Center to a new location. So the answer is no, it's not separate, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, in the overview of the committee report, it was stated that public consultation was conducted here in Cotabato City. May I know, Mr. Speaker, bakit isang beses lang po tayo nag-conduct ng public consultation considering the significance of this bill? And it affects not only the employees of the Barn region, but of course, the totality of the constituency of the Barn, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to believe that it is not in the number of public consultations, but in the quality, Mr. Speaker. All of those stakeholders that we invited, including local government units, representatives from ministries, law enforcement, public utilities, even the local government unit of Parang, civil society organizations, and some were able to join physically and some via Zoom. We actually opened it up because during this period, this was Ramadan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, given the considerations mentioned, Mr. Speaker, would it not be more prudent if we had conducted a set of public consultation with the fact that the physical attendees were quite few in number, or there were position papers submitted by concerned group of people, would it be not prudent sana tayo ng another public consultation para po majority of our constituents gusto nila. Of course, they are entitled to know ano po Mr. Speaker.
We left it to the wisdom of the Committee on Rules, and the committee adopted a calendar, a schedule for this, which included at which approved a public consultation that would be done once, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, what was the rationale or the main reason why the public consultation was conducted in Cotabato City, Mr. Speaker?
Mr. Speaker, because of the proximity and during that time, it was Ramadan, Mr. Speaker, and we also gave lead time for all of those who we invited to either come here via personally or via Zoom, Mr. Speaker. So since we are the seat of the regional government temporarily is in Cotabato City, so it was held here, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, Bayan was found to be the most ideal location for any administrative and political center. May we be apprised, Mr. Speaker, of the specific result of the feasibility study based on the criteria mentioned by our proponent earlier, or at best, may the proponent can show us a matrix of the result of the feasibility study for the consumption of the people here present, and of course, our constituents watching our session.
Yes, most definitely, Mr. Speaker. This was also presented during the public consultation and the meeting of the Committee on Rules, Mr. Speaker. So this is the criteria. And then this is the summary of assessment, Mr. Speaker, ranking the identified alternative sites according to the criteria item, and Parang is on top. Came out on top, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, it was mentioned earlier that the IRR crafted by the committee. May we know, Mr. Speaker, what specific committee are we talking about here?
Under section 5 in the committee report, Mr. Speaker, Committee on the Establishment of the Seat of Government of the Bar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, I have concern with standards or guidelines of this bill once this bill will be enacted or it will be passed into law. Under the ruling of the Supreme Court in the case of Abacada Guru versus Perisima, GR number 166715, dated August 14, 2008, the Supreme Court laid down there two tests that determine rather the validity of the division of legislative power. And if I may, Mr. Speaker, first is the completeness test, second is the sufficient standard test. A law is complete when it sets forth the policy to be executed, carried out, or implemented by the delegate. It lays down a sufficient standard when it provides adequate guidelines or limitations in the law to map out the boundaries of the delegates' authority and prevent the delegation from running riot. Sufficient, the standard must specify the limits of the delegates' authority, announce the legislative policy, and identify the conditions under which it is to be implemented. From this ruling of the Supreme Court, Mr. Speaker, we can see from our here that it lacks those standards set forth by the Supreme Court. As a manifestation, Mr. Speaker, I support the idea that the transfer into more conducive area. However, I would just like to point out that we cannot afford a sloppy law. So perhaps in the period of amendment, we can consider this standard set forth by the Supreme Court. That is all, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much po, and wassalam.
Thank you, Madam. Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, may we recognize Deputy Speaker Attorney Faisal Intago.
The Deputy Speaker, Minister of MOTC is Faisal Intago is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, my idol. We are allowed, Mr. Speaker, to seek clarificatory questions to the proponent of the mission, Mr. Speaker.
Madam,
If the proponent is willing, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, first of all, this is a clarificatory question regarding the question that was raised yesterday and today regarding the power of the BTA to provide a seat of government in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. Mr. Speaker, kung pwede ko lang itanong sa proponent, saan niya hinugot na batas na ang Bangsamoro Transition Authority ay pwede ng seat of government dito sa Bangsamoro government? Is there a particular law in Bangsamoro
Mr. Speaker, it's in Article 7, Powers of the Government, Mr. Speaker, Section 1, if I'm not mistaken.
It's not the only law. Kasi ang sinasabi nila kahapon at ngayon, yung batas na yan ay applicable lang doon sa regular parliament at hindi ay pwedeng gawin ng Bangsamoro Transition Authority. Nakasaad ba sa Article 16 of the Bangsamoro Organic Law na may limitations ang paggawa ng batas ang Bangsamoro Transition Authority?
Mr. Speaker, in the Bangsamoro Organic Law, even under the transitory provisions of Article 16, it is stated that during the transition, the Bangsamoro Transition Authority is the government, shall exercise the powers of a regular Bangsamoro government, Mr. Speaker. So there is no limitation, Mr. Speaker.
And under Section 4 of the same law, paragraph G, ang sinasabi sa Section 4 of the same law, other matters that may be necessary for the protection and promotion of the general welfare of the constituents of the Bangsamoro Authority.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Ito ba, other matters, kasama dito ang paggawa ng seat of government?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Yan ang sinasabi ko because if you read Section 1 of Article 6 and Section 16, Article 16, Section 4, we should read it together. Ang sinasabi ko sa Supreme Court, basahin ng batas sa Pittsburgh, basahin ng kabulang batas para makuha o yung totoong meaning ng batas. And we should read Article 16, Section 4, and Article 6, Section 1 in conjunction in order that we should read it. Is that still, Mr. Speaker?
Yes, that is correct, Mr. Speaker.
Pangalawa, because and this is very crucial in the powers of the BTA. Sinasabi ng batas, nakakaroon tayo ng seat of government, na-establish ng seat of government. Sincerity and efficiency. Sinasabi ba ng batas na kailangan public consultation? Sinasabi ba ng batas na kailangan referendum? Kailangan ng publicity? Kasi sa batas kasi, wala akong nabasa dito na consultation, wala akong nabasang plebiscite, wala akong nabasang referendum sa pag-establish ng seat of government. Is that true, Mr. Speaker?
Wala po talaga sa batas, Mr. Speaker. Sinunod lang po natin yung public consultation na nakalagay sa rules at ang isang public consultation ay sapat, Mr. Speaker.
Ang public consultation, Mr. Speaker, is a process of enacting a law. But it is not a condition sine qua non in creating a law. As a matter of fact, every Congress that Constitution. Sabi mo sa may public consultation. Isa na sa pag-anong batas yung public consultation. Is that Mr. Speaker?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Oh. So, ganun Mr. Speaker, kaya ako sinasabi, dahil ang nakakatapas sa pag-establish ng State of Parliament, Section 1, Article 6, feasibility and efficiency is parang accessible. Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Is parang efficient.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
So, the fund has been completed. Sa ating talaga, Mr. Speaker, we speak to the others. Now, my question is, sinasabi kanina, laki ng gagastusin natin sa pag-establish ng seat of government, gastusin na lang natin sa pangkabuhayan, sa housing, para mapalago yung mga business ng ating mga government. Why it is so important that we establish a seat of government? Bakit pinaka-importante sa isang tanggapan na mag-create ng isang opisina niya? Bakit pinaka-importante?
Mr. Speaker, the seat of government symbolizes the Bangsamoro government. As I will borrow our brother DS Karim Miswari's statement yesterday, it is the identity of the regional government and of course the Bangsamoro people. When you look at the Bangsamoro Government Center in Cotabato City, you will remember ARMM. Now we have to make something that would be remembered as the BARM.
Yes, therefore, Mr. Speaker, because the same is the same. It's the same.
Walang public consultation. When the forefathers of the American Revolution establishes the White House from Pennsylvania, from Philadelphia to Washington D.C., they established it. It is the people were misplaced from Philadelphia to Washington D.C. But no public consultation. And imagine, Mr. Speaker, the US is the father of democracy. You could have done public consultation, but no public consultation because we have to establish first a seat of government in order to establish order and authority in the governance. That is the purpose of establishing a seat of government. Kaya yung pera, with your respect, na mga gastos natin dyan ay mag-multiply dahil makikilala sa buong mundo na ang Bangsamoro government ay may sarili lang seat of government that the people can deal with, that the people can transact with, and the people can make the transaction with. So that's the purpose, Mr. Speaker. That is the importance of establishing a seat of government because it establishes authority, Mr. Speaker. What can you say, Mr. Speaker, to the floor leader, Mr. Speaker?
I could not have said more emphatically, Mr. Speaker.
Parang hindi interpolation. So,
Unfortunately, I'm the Minister of Transportation and part of the committee sabi nga nila, ang tanong kanila, Mr. Speaker, mga tao dito, paano mag-travel doon, mahirapan. Sabi ko, the state of government and parang establish the upgraded parang just like what happened in Metro. It is not impossible, Mr. Speaker. Unless this is the establish and it is in the bound, Mr. Speaker. That is not impossible, Mr. Speaker. I hope the JV will be there in 10 years from now. Mr. Speaker, yung pag-establish ng state of government, Mr. Speaker, when the president relocated the several shelters in the Philippines during the time of former President Makapagalaran, there was no public consultation. Many people were displaced, like a Tabato City, from region to Nadal. So, no public consultation. Many people also were displaced. So, it's a matter of understanding wisdom of the executive and the wisdom of the leadership regarding the establishment of the regional center, Mr. Speaker. So, for now, Mr. Speaker, I'm a little bit satisfied with the answer of the proposal, Mr. Speaker. I little bit satisfied. That's all, Mr. Speaker. Legislation that we can pass Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Pagpalain ng Bangsamoro, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Minister Tago, for your passionate advocacy, sponsorship speech, interpellation.
Mr. Speaker,
Majority Leader.
before we proceed with the final interpellator, may I request that we welcome our guests in the gallery. We have guests from the Republic of South Korea, Mr. Yoon Yang-guk of the SDC Company Limited, the chairman, and Yoon-hee Kim, for SDC Company Limited, CEO. They are friends of the former Speaker of the Parliament, Vice Chairman Gansali Japar, and they are here to visit us, sir.
Thank you for coming and welcome to the Parliament, Bangsamoro Parliament.
Welcome. So finally, Mr. Speaker, we have, this is now the second round of interpellation. We have two more interpellator, and we hope that just for this final round, please focus only on questions that have not yet been raised so that we can already proceed.
May I move for a 1-minute suspension, Mr. Speaker?
1 minute suspension. Session resumed.
Majority
Leader.
Mr. Speaker, considering that this is already the second round of interpellation, we would like to request the interpellator to please present all your questions. And then the proponent will answer it all together. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You mean all the interpellators?
No,
One at a time.
So we will ask
The first,
interpellator will present all of his questions, and then it will be answered all together.
okay, please proceed.
Thank you.
Who will be recognized now, Majority Leader? What is your request?
May I request, Mr. Speaker, that we recognize the Honorable Deputy Floor Leader, Attorney MP Joe Loren.
My best friend, Joe Lorena, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is very important and this is also economical because this question has been badly planned. But I want to see to parang adjusted time. The leader has admitted that it is just 30 minutes. There was a study conducted by the environmentalists which says that Cotabato will be submerging, similar to Jakarta because of climate change. My question is parang similarly situated to Cotabato City because it will be expensive to establish a center in an area where it will be submerging. Let us remember that even Jakarta is not transferring to Balikpapan because of the effect of climate change. So that's the question that I want to raise because I do not like to invest the money of the people to a seat that may be affected by climate change. That's basically my question because this is a study already provided for by many environmentalists of the country. That's the first question. And the second question, with all due respect to my friend, our Minister of Transportation, he was asking for it. And there is a provision under Section 4 of Article 7 that says that important issues of the ban, the Parliament may conduct a referendum on that matter. This is a seat of government as demanded, is a very sensitive and important issue. And therefore, the Parliament may exercise that power under item B of Section 4 of Article 7, Republic Act 11054. I will accept that because these are important issues that has to be raised because I do not like that I will be voting on something that I have to raise an issue because if that incident happened in 2020, I might also be blamed for allowing to transfer a seat to a place that might submerge in the future. But I will allow the majority to answer whether similarly situated to Cotabato City, which is below sea level, because these are things that has to be considered in the identification of a seat of government. If Jakarta for 30 years has 10 million for that seat of government of Indonesia is transferring to Balikpapan in south of Indonesia, then we might as well consider all these factors in identifying the seat so that we will not be repeating moving from one place to the other in the future. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Sir, thank you for that. I have tried to avoid pointing that out, Mr. Speaker, that there has been a study that Cotabato City is among the sinking cities in Asia. But Parang is not similarly situated, Mr. Speaker. That is the short answer.
That's the answer, not similarly situated.
So, Mr. Speaker, we proceed with the second interpellator. We will recognize MP Baitan Ambatuan. And again, we will follow the same procedure. Please present all your questions so that the proponent can answer this all together. Thank you.
MP Baitan Ambatuan is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Mr. Speaker, mukhang mahirapan ako doon sa setup, but I'll try my best. Kasi gusto ko sana ng sagot dahil yung sagot, may tanong din doon sa sagot eh. But nonetheless, Mr. Speaker, I'll build on the question of MP Lorena earlier with regards to the environmental feasibility of the establishment of government center in Parang. Yesterday, I was not done yet with the technical aspect, but altogether, Mr. Speaker, everything boils down to what we call feasibility study. Again, Mr. Speaker, the very question here is that was there really a feasibility study, so to speak, not a comparative assessment of the transfer, but a feasibility study that talks about technical feasibility, economic feasibility, environmental feasibility, and all other feasibilities that may be included in the feasibility study. And one of the very significant concern was the concern raised by MP Joe Lorena. So, based on the answer of the proponent, Mr. Speaker, I don't know what is the basis of the answer. They say that Parang Maguindanao is not situated with Cotabato City. May I know, Mr. Speaker, if the basis of the answer was based on a feasibility study that we have been talking? That's the first question, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I was not able to get a copy of the so-called feasibility study. So, similar to the request of MP Ambulodpo, if that report or assessment of feasibility study, as they called it, could be given to the members of the Parliament, so we will be informed of if either this is really a feasibility study, because I doubt this is really a feasibility study, Mr. Speaker, because if you could claim to me that that is really a feasibility study, I would ask a very particular one concern or one technical question with regards to formulation of a feasibility study. The very basic question is, what is the result of the benefit cost analysis of the transfer of the seat of government to Parang Maguindanao? That's the second question. Number 3 question, Mr. Speaker. Masarap sana kung may sagot eh. Number 3, Mr. Speaker. Kung pupunta po tayo ng Parang Maguindanao, galing ka ng Cotabato City, magtatagalog na po ako because this one is a very, very practical question. Kung pupunta ka ng Parang Maguindanao, galing ka ng Cotabato City, dadaan ka either sa Delta Bridge o yung sa third bridge at dadaan ka ng Sinway Bridge. Wala ka ng option kung dadaan ng Sinway Bridge. Ang Sinway Bridge nang nakaraang taon ay nanganib ang kanyang bahay. Muntik nang mag-collapse. In fact, it reached a level of alarming level. And until now, yan po ay andun sa pamunuan ng national government, ng BTA Governments National, at ang maintenance and operation yan ay nasa national government. Kung yan po ay mag-collapse at any given time, yan ang pandaanan natin. Unless pupunta ka muna ng Bukidnon, o pupunta ka dito o pupunta ka dito. Wala ka nang mapuntahan, doon lang.
So kung yan ay magko-collapse, sa panahon na itatayo natin or sa panahon at any given time, sa feasibility study na sinasabi sa feasibility study, because this is part of the technical feasibility study. Yan po. Apat na. Now, panglima po. Panglima. Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
Yung pang parang Maguindanao del Norte, specifically Polyok Port, Polyok Ecozone, ay declared po yan ng government na economic zone. And in fact, it is being recognized right now by the Bangsamoro government. Considering that it is an eco-zone, and the future, dahil alam natin na sana ang kapuntahan talaga natin ay development, kasabay ng pag-develop ng ating government center, ay yung pag-usbong ng ekonomiya sa pamamagitan ng eco-zone. And that means to say, a number of locators will be coming in to the eco zone, and that part of the area in parang Mindanao will become a thriving and an economic zone. I-add mo yung government center na siguro pagpalagay natin mga 10,000 tao. No? Mga 10,000 tao ang magsisituate dyan sa area na yan. So pagsabayan lang yan, in next 20 to 30 years, yung development ng dalawang areas, baka mas maunang malubog. Baka mas maunang malubog. No? Because we've been eyeing this as our eco zone. So, kung i-develop natin yan, i-develop natin yung kabila, na? Magtatabi lang yung area na yan eh. If it's in Landasan, in Polyok, this is a very adjacent area. And the same problem would occur, just like what is happening in the street of Governor Gutierrez. There will be congestion in the next 10, 20, and 30 years from now. So are we solving any problem here, Mr. Speaker? Yun lang muna yung lima because I'll deal on the wordings of the bill, Mr. Speaker. Because I have seen a lot of but I should get first your idea about this.
Mr. Speaker, I just want to clarify if the interpellator is already finished with the question. So
I'm not done with the question. If you want me to proceed, I'll proceed.
finish all of your questions so
Okay.
that we can address all of this.
So I hope somebody is taking note of my questions. On the title of the bill, it specifically says that in the Bangsamoro organic law, and we cannot be selective, no? We cannot be selective in choosing any particular wording because it's explicitly written in the BOL, and it says there that it's a permanent seat. No, so the word permanent should be put in the title first. Now, in section 2, on the declaration of policy, it says there that it has the power to create offices and organize its own bureaucracy to ensure efficient and effective delivery of government programs and projects. I think this is not relevant, Mr. Speaker, because this pertains to reorganization and not to the setting up of a seat of government, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to ask the opinion of the proponent on this. Third, Mr. Speaker, on the bill,
is on the section 4. The last portion of the section 4, which says to ensure a smooth transition, consultations and dialogue will be with the local government units concerned and other stakeholders shall be conducted. Are you pertaining to a consultation wherein this will be done prior to coming in to Parang Maguindanao, or are you referring to a consultation and dialogue with the LGU in order to ensure smooth transition? That's a question, Mr. Speaker. On section 5, Mr. Speaker, the word my question here is, if this is a committee, where is this committee anchored on? Because a committee should be created from another entity which is already established. And in contrast to that, how do you look at forming a task force? Forming a task force is specifically for a task of setting up or establishing the Bangsamoro Government Center. And in the second paragraph of the section 5, it confuses me because there are lots of tasks from the preparation to the development to the implementation of master plans, take note, it's plans, there are many plans, strategies and processes, and timetable, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, would it be too much on the part of the committee, which is a loose body anyway, to be tasked with the implementation of master plan? You know, implementation of a master plan would take you, I think, depending on the master plan, if this is a 30-hectare master plan, I think it would also involve 30 years of preparation. And I don't think that the committee will exist for 30 years, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, I have some proposed suggestions. And instead of a committee, perhaps we can look at a very specific body that would look at, one, procurement of the consultancy services for the preparation of the master plan. They are not the ones who will implement the master plan. It cannot be because it's a committee. It's just a committee. What they can do is to procure or task or maybe they can facilitate the procurement because somebody's entity, a legitimate entity, should procure the consultancy services, Mr. Speaker. And perhaps one of the tasks is to ensure the completion and approval of the master plan by the Bangsamoro Parliament. Would you agree with me with that? And third, perhaps tasks. And there are various tasks because I do not agree on the wordings here. And later on in proper time, I would propose for amendment, very specific amendment of the powers and function of the body that will pass, that will pass for this particular bill. Next, on section 6, it says here that there will be a gradual manner upon the completion of the required infrastructure such as office buildings, roads, lights and power, water, communication, and necessary facilities. Medyo kailangan nating i-define yung gradual manner, but at the same time, if this one is contingent with the completion of the government center, baka 30 years pa tayong makalipat. Or yung mga lumipat, kasi I suppose many of us, including myself, will no longer be part of this. So let's look at that. In section 7, Mr. Speaker, it says here that the infrastructure, buildings and other facilities in the existing government center in Cotabato City shall be improved. Gagasto pa rin tayo. Pero sabi nyo kanina, lulubog ang Cotabato City. In order to sustain their usefulness for government operations. What does this mean? Gagamitin pa rin ba natin? And preserve the historical value, Mr. Speaker. Ano po ang ibig sabihin natin ng government operations in this case, Mr. Speaker? And Mr. Speaker, kung totoong merong feasibility study, magkano yung initial investment na kinonflict ginamit sa pag-complete ng benefit cost ratio para sabihin ng consultant, sino ng consultant yan, na feasible yung transfer sa Paran. The Paran area is more competitive with the other areas that were cited. So, ano yung initial na amount na ginamit dyan sa pag-complete ng benefit cost ratio, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, in the experience, no? Base sa nabasa ko, and correct me if I'm wrong, yung pang sinasite natin ng mga model, for example, yung Putrajaya sa Malaysia. Ilagay ko hanggang ngayon, hindi pa tapos yung usapin ng area na yan. Dahil yung kanilang parliament, naiwan doon sa Kuala Lumpur. Hindi naman lahat nangipat, Mr. Speaker. Kung kaya't kailangan natin pag-isipan ng maigi, kung paano natin maka-economically useful yung anong existing facilities na meron na tayo. Dahil kagaya to ng interpellations kanina, nahirapan tayong kunin ng Cotabato City. Ito pong Cotabato City, halos lahat po ng naging presidente ng Pilipinas. Ito pong government center na ito ay nakaapak na dito. Landmark po ito ng Bangsamoro, ng Muslim in Muslim Mindanao. Kung kaya kailangan i-preserve natin ito, hindi kailangan iiwan ng ganon-ganon na lang ito. So, I hope and I pray that what you're telling us, you should explain to us if it's a really a feasibility study or it's just a comparative survey or assessment, because these two things are entirely different. And what I'm seeing right now is not a feasibility study, but just an assessment, comparative assessment of the 4 areas that were cited earlier. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. That ends the final list of interpellators for this afternoon. For the response, may I request that we recognize our Minister Architect Ed Guerra to first respond to the questions, and then to be followed by Dr. MP Susana Anayatin, and finally our floor leader.
Thank
The
you.
Honorable MP Minister Guerra is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The question of MP Ampatuan regarding the infra on the technical side, like he mentioned, the Simoy Bridge. Okay. For the information of everybody, and National Public Works conducted structural investigation of the Simoy bridge. We are in the light of, at the yung paing. So it's structurally sound, but there is now preparation of detailed engineering plan to expand the Simoy bridge into 4 lanes. I talked personally to Yusek Saday, who is the one sponsoring the funding of this expansion of Simoy River. Yes, it is true that we should recognize other accessibility to the proposed government center. And for information of everybody, there is already just a matter of loan sourcing for the construction of along the shoreline from Balabagan to Parang, a highway. The detailed engineering drawing plan is already finished. And there is also proposed west diversion road from Parang to Cotabato City along shoreline, passing Sultan Masura, Sultan Kudarat up to Cotabato City, also maybe crossing the Bukana. So nasa pipeline na yan. So and also there is the proposed already the detailed engineering drawing is already finished. Just a matter of looking for funding loan, or maybe they will include it in the national budget. The road from Matanog, Barrera, Buldon, Alamada, down to Picawayan. So nasa ko na yan para ma-enlighten tayo, ma-imagine natin yung very accessibility ng proposed government center.
If I may, Mr. Speaker, are you referring to the JICA study?
Yes, JICA. And also JICA also, I don't know if they already submitted the Metro Cotabato City Development Plan. And Parang is part of that development plan. And also, when we propose the government center and we're going to do the development plan, imagine, my peers, that it will be a self-contained community with government offices, institution, tenement square, wherein that we can gather a lot of people. As of now, we don't have kung saan tayo maabot just to gather large number of people. Also with housing for the workers, everything will be considered in that development plan. So let your imagination walk, and whatever development plan for that matter will be discussed and presented to this body. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam.
sino nga ba ang gumawa ng feasibility study na pinag-uusapan simula kahapon? So according to this final report, the feasibility study on the transfer of the Barm Government Center to a new location.
Excuse me, Mr. Speaker, I didn't ask kung sino particularly, but I was asking
Meron.
the benefit cost ratio of the feasibility study that was conducted, because allegedly there was a feasibility study, and I'm asking a basic question.
Please, the floor is with Dr.
But Mr. Speaker, the question, this answer is not responsive, Mr. Speaker.
There's a lot of questions already that were propounded. So please,
Mr. Speaker, I don't want to here. That's my point, Mr. Speaker.
please she has the floor, Mr. Speaker. Please don't interrupt our MP.
Let us hear MP Susana first, and then maybe hear again the response of or the rebuttal of MP Baintan. Please proceed, MP Susana.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So if I may continue, the feasibility study is under contract with the Ministry of Public Works and prepared by Danilo C. Buenbraso, consultant. And who is this Danilo Buenbraso? Personally, he's a former office mate, my former office mate at DTI Region 12. And the last position he held was that of a DTI City Director of Cotabato City. And then he already engaged on consultancy afterwards. He's also a fellow visiting professor of MSU Graduate School, Maguindanao, handling courses on management planning and control. His key qualifications: recently completed the management of the urban infrastructure development in Greater Cotabato, data collection, master plan preparation, pre-feasibility studies covering Cotabato City, Dato Odin Sinswat, Sultan Kudarat, Sultan Mastura, Parang, and parts of Pigkawayan. In the last 12 months, he provided consulting professional services in the Ministry of Health, BARM, about local data collection, survey on medical equipment for core hospitals under JICA funding, and Bangsamoro Sports Commission for planning sessions. And then another thing, his formal training and extensive experience in project management, training, capacity building, and research work, particularly in ARMM and BARM and other conflict-affected areas in Mindanao. His working experience as consultant with various government and private organizations engaged in development and humanitarian work, including foreign-funded projects, for example, the JICA, the World Bank, European Union, and IFAD. Is familiar with various foreign-funded projects in the BARM and has had working relations with political leaders in the BARM and other conflict-affected areas of Mindanao. For his education, Mr. Speaker, he studied at the National University of Singapore, Master in Public Policy as Temasek Scholar. At the Notre Dame University, he studied Master in Public Administration, Meritus, a scholarship program of the Civil Service Commission. At the Notre Dame University, he studied Bachelor of Laws, and same school at the Notre Dame University, he studied Bachelor of Science in Commerce, major in Management, and graduated magna cum laude. Has lots of related work experiences enumerated herein, Mr. Speaker, and I am turning over this document to the Secretariat and to make it available for those who are interested, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable MP Bangsamoro Patuan may make some clarificatory questions
Speaker.
based on what was said.
Mr. Speaker, first of all, I didn't ask for the CB of the person, Mr. Speaker. In fact, I avoided mentioning the name because he's not here, Mr. Speaker. And what I am asking, Mr. Speaker, is the result of the study. It's not the CB of that person. I know the person. It's not the CB. And the manifestation, Mr. Speaker, because I'm not comfortable with this process. This is a period of interpellation and debate. I am not debating here. Walang debate na nangyari because yung proseso natin ay nabasado mga ako nagsalita, challenge natin. This is period of interpellation and debate, Mr. Speaker. Hindi ko maintindihan bakit pag ako nagsasalita, nag-change ka agad yung system natin.
Mr. Speaker.
Minute suspension.
Hindi naman.
Session resume. In response to the manifestation of the Honorable Baintan, MP Baintan ng Patuan, we regret that the mechanism that we followed seems to have caused confusion. So nonetheless, we will just have to proceed, and we ask the sponsor to answer all the questions that was proposed. But heads up, we will finish the interpellation today, and we suspend to continue tomorrow for the approval on second reading, because due to the constraints of time, we will have to suspend session after the honorable sponsor shall have answered. We regret about the confusion, MP Baintan. Nasaan na siya? We regret about that. Nonetheless, hindi na dapat maulit kasi kwanse. Ako, nakalimutan ko na rin ng tanong. Kaya, lalo na sa amin, mga senior citizen of the Republic. Senior. Hindi mo makukuha yun. Yung senior official na papalitan ka. Please proceed, Madam Sponsor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I took note of all of the questions and have prepared answers, Mr. Speaker. On the question whether Parang is similarly situated with Cotabato City, Parang is 212.5 meters above sea level, Mr. Speaker. So it is not similarly situated, unlike Cotabato City, Mr. Speaker. Second question was about the cost and benefit analysis, Mr. Speaker. And I probably would just like to register that the statement, I mean, of MP Susana Anayatin earlier was only in response to yesterday's question as to who. So that was asked, but nevertheless, Mr. Speaker, we would like to submit that the feasibility study, we take it as a feasibility study, and we respect the interpellators' consideration of it as a comparative study or analysis, but we submit that it is. So the cost and benefit analysis is not in numbers, but there are portions of the feasibility study that talk about the positive and negative social, economic, and political impacts. And as to the third question, about the master plan, about the, have we considered, no, yung Delta Bridge, yun yung question kanina. We also have to consider, Mr. Speaker, that there are employees of the BARM and there are transacting public that come from outside Cotabato City that also traverse Delta Bridge, yung mga sinabi ni ng interpellator earlier. And that is going to be the same case if the employees are residing within Cotabato City, that they have to do that. But we know that the committee that is going to be set up if this bill passes into law will have to develop a master plan, and that would have to consider mitigation measures to ensure that we will address these problems as mentioned by the interpellator. Next is about Polyok. Ang statement niya kanina is baka mauna pa itong malubog. At saka yung mga traffic baka parehas dito sa bungad ng Governor Gutierrez na maging ganun din. I don't want to sound presumptive, but because this is a 10-year plan, we hope na magkakaroon nga ng magandang master plan to address and, you know, make sure that this does not happen. But we also have to look at the positive. Let us not dwell on the negative. The positive of it is that we are able to share development and progress with a neighboring municipality and not concentrated in one city. So, you know, looking at the best interest, no, applying the principle of maslaha, it is in the best interest of the general welfare, Mr. Speaker. Next is about Section 4, continuing consultations. If the interpolator asks whether it's going to be a continuing consultations, and we answer in the affirmative, Mr. Speaker, that there will be continuing consultations because the master plan will have to really address kung ano rin po, responsive ba to the needs of the people. Next is the committee. The interpolator mentioned that a committee has to come from an established body. We beg to disagree, Mr. Speaker, because there could be an interagency committee. It could be a body. As lawyers and legislators, siguro term lang, no? As to the term, nomenclature niya, kung si body ba ito, committee. But we are open. If you don't want to call it a committee, a body, we can do that during the proper period of amendment. Next, Mr. Speaker, is about appropriation. Again, we will expect if there are proposed amendments on the provision on appropriation. Next is about the gradual manner of transfer. Meron pong apprehension yung interpolator earlier that baka 30 years pa, matagalan tayo doon. But during the committee meeting, the meaning of gradual transfer is not really all at once na dapat matapos lahat. If there is going to be already a sustainable office building there, assuming parliament yun, tapos meron na pong mga available na public utilities, ay gradually pwede tayong mag-transfer. Next is about the section, yung sa preservation. Section 7, Mr. Speaker. I would like to point out, Mr. Speaker, that this is the provision that the interpolator is challenging is actually a provision that she wrote in her bill. Bill number 1, Mr. Speaker, that we adopted in the committee, Mr. Speaker. That is how it was written. Well, meron lang pong dinagdag, but essentially, because we give voice to all those who also drafted a bill in relation to the seat of government, Mr. Speaker. So those are the questions, and those are the answers to all of the questions that I took note of, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, if I may, number 1, I'd like to believe that indeed it was a comparative assessment and not a feasibility study, and therefore a need for a feasibility study is in order, Mr. Speaker. Second, Mr. Speaker, with regards to the provision about the government operations, which was lifted from my bill, the premise there is we are using Cotabato City as a center and not Parang. And that's why the wording is that. Because we're going to utilize the facilities in order to operate. So it cannot be used for the other provisions, which is not the intent of the bill, no? So, and third, Mr. Speaker, with regards to the long CV of the person, actually, I really avoided naming names yesterday because I don't want to, Mr. Speaker. And I was surprised because the answer to my question is not the answer to my question, because I was really asking about the benefit cost ratio. But nonetheless, Mr. Speaker, it is already part of the record, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, if it may sound offensive to whoever, because their names were dragged in the discussion, and that was not the intention of this interpellation, Mr. Speaker. It was not coming from me. It did not come from me. In fact, because I am pretty conscious about naming names of persons who are not part of this deliberation, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, in proper time, and I would like to state, Mr. Speaker, and again, Mr. Speaker, that I filed two bills, Mr. Speaker. One bill is declaring Cotabato City as the permanent seat of government. The other bill, Mr. Speaker, because this is my solution to the problem of congestion and traffic outside the Bangsamoro Government Center. Specifically, the Governor Gutierrez Street and the highways traversing Bangsamoro Government Center. My counter proposal, Mr. Speakers, is in the meantime, I am for the transfer in the long range, in the long run, maybe 30 years from now when we are fully established. But right now, Mr. Speaker, we cannot afford to spend that much for the transfer. Parang i-approve mo yung buong government na nag-exist ng 30 years. More than 30 years, in fact, upon the creation of the LTP. My position then is, why don't we add, no? Kung bahay pa yan, kung pamilya, lumaki yung pamilya mo, hanapan mo siya ng space, pero hindi mo iwan yung pamilya mo, yung kung saan nangyari na pinagsamahan ng pamilya mo, ang daming memories yan. Kung hindi, hanapan mo ng solusyon, mag-add ka ng isang lugar, and my proposal is to put up an annex BGC, annex Bangsamoro Government Center, within Cotabato City. And I believe that there are lots of areas available in Cotabato City just to preserve the historical and to complete the momentum of economic development of Cotabato City and the adjacent areas. That's my proposal, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Bainta ng Patuan. Your leader.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not able to finally recognize
Are you asking, you are interpolating? Yes, Mr. Speaker, before the Deputy Speaker, Lanang Ali Jr. Takes the floor, I'd like to remind everyone, pati sarili ko, na-remind lang ako nung nakita ko yung rules natin na minsan lang tayo pwede tumayo. At kung kailangan natin tumayo uli, it will need, Section 5 ba yan? It will need the approval of the Parliament. But in this case, ako nag-approve as presiding. Doon sa pagtayo, yung bawat isa sa atin ay limited to 1 hour. So, Section 5 and 6. So, anyway, mabuti ito, we're learning from some confusion because I cannot say it's a mistake. I approve as presiding yung request. So, Deputy Speaker Lanang Ali, raise your voice. Please fill this room with your eloquence.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I would like to remind that this is my first time to interpret kasama dito sa Secretary, Mr. Speaker. Yes, this is a manifestation, Mr. Speaker, as I observe the discussion and deliberation of this bill, Mr. Speaker. I would like to remind this august body, Mr. Speaker, that our work and task is to legislate a law. No? Napapansin ko po, Mr. Speaker, na pinag-uusapan natin dito ang karamihan ay issue of the law. No? That will take place 5 years, 6 years na mangyayari. No? Ano ba trabaho natin? Basahin natin ng batas na propose natin sa committee report section by section kung ano sa commission na propose na elements. And then kung ano ba? Ang importante, Mr. Speaker, ay sumunod tayo sa proseso ng legislation. Nagkaroon ng public consultations, no? Studies, feasibility studies, and meron tayo sections, the sections, and then Mr. Speaker, sa parang we are here to legislate a law. No? Hindi tayo mag-uusap ng bagay na mangyayari pa. In fact, if they vote us ito after this, I doubt it. Na na-implement ito in 2 years. I doubt it. Na-implement ito in 2 to 5 years. Maybe. Na-implement ito in 5 to 10 years. Possible. Kung bakit natin pinagawa ko? Ano ko makita yung logic, Mr. Speaker? No? Accessibility, efficiency, Mr. Speaker. It is a relative issue. What may be accessible to you may not be accessible to me. Hindi ka pwede sabihin accessible ito sa inyo na sa akin mo. What is important, Mr. Speaker, is this is for the greater good ng majority Bangsamoro. Yan ang pinaka-importante, Mr. Speaker, kung ito ba social, physical, political, feasible. Hindi na ito sa panunod sa atin. We must decide on this matter. No? So, I will command this August body, tignan nyo, section 1 to section 12, tignan nyo kung po sa yes. Oh, kung ayaw na ulitin ko, kung ayaw sa parang maging gano'n, protest kayo. Kung ayaw na ng gano'n, protest kayo. No? But, the end of the is ipapasa natin itong batas nito. And there has been a decision on that matter na meron tayong transfer ng seat ng government. Yan ang decision. Pero kung paano implement ito, kung paano gagawin ito, let the executive department do the job. Ang sa atin lang dito, mag-focus lang tayo from section 1 to 12. Doon tayo. Ikot. So, Mr. Speaker, maraming salamat. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Kala ko nagagalit ng Deputy Speaker.
Mr. Speaker,
Majority Leader.
I would like to thank everyone for a very active and brilliant and passionate period of interpellation and debate. With that, Mr. Speaker, I move to terminate the period of interpellation.
There is a motion to terminate the period of interpellation and debate duly seconded. Is there any objection? There being none, same is approved.
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the session until tomorrow at 1 o'clock.
There is a motion to suspend the session until tomorrow at 1 o'clock. There will be second.
Mr. Speaker,
No,
Mr. Speaker, prior to that, may I also request that the fellow members of the Parliament to please submit your proposed amendments so that we will be ready tomorrow when we tackle the period.
Those who wish to propose amendments may advance their proposed amendments so that it will be finally ready tomorrow to save them time. So, session is suspended until tomorrow at 1 p.m.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.